There are two types of error, and there are types of error under our hypothesis testing process. Now, what is error first? Error is, of course, we all know that it's one of the many things that we people is afraid to commit. Even in real life situations, we would hardly come out with a decision immediately because of our fear to commit error. So the same true with hypothesis testing, there is also a possibility that as a researcher, we commit an error in our decision whether to accept or reject the null hypothesis. So for those type of error, we have type 1 and type 2 error in our hypothesis testing process. So we have actually 4 outcomes wherein you can see here in the table. I will just explain kung paano ito. So we have the fact here. So ang fact, yung totoo. So ibig sabihin, the null hypothesis here is true and this side here is false. And then the decision, again, it's whether to accept or reject the null hypothesis. Now, if the fact says that the null hypothesis is true, of course, the correct decision is to accept it. Kasi true, di ba? So, tama, totoo. The statement is true. Anong gagawin mo? Di ba, i-accept mo dapat yung statement? But, if in the case na tama yung statement at hindi mo in-accept yung statement na yon, which is the correct decision, ang ginawa mo, ni-reject mo. Nagkaroon ka ng type 1 error. So, you reject the null hypothesis that is true, nagkaroon ka ng type 1 error. What about this type 2 error? Ang type 2 error is false. So, for example, chismis siya. Diba usually kapag chismis, mali, false, kasi nadadagdagan, nababawasan ng chismis. Chismis siya at false yung statement. Ang dapat na gawin mo is to reject it. Tama? That's the correct decision. Ngayon, ang ginawa mo na nakarinig ng chismis, instead na i-reject mo siya, ang ginawa mo is inaccept mo. Inaccept mo. So, nagkaroon ka tuloy ng type 2 error. So, that is the two errors, type 1 and type 2 error. So, in English, so we have this type 1 error is a type of error wherein rejects the null hypothesis when in fact it is true. True nga siya, instead na ina-accept mo, ni-reject mo. So, type 1 error. It is also known as the alpha error. Type 2 error naman is this type of error fails to reject. Ang ibig sabihin niyan ay hindi mo ni-reject. Yan. So, since false yung statement, instead na nire-reject mo, hindi mo ni-reject. So, ang ginawa mo, inaccept mo pa. So, you fail to reject the null when in fact it is false. So, that is type 2 error. Okay, I will give you an example for this. So, in real life, for example, sa type 1 error, kunwari, nag-graduate ka ng nursing, at nag-work ka sa hospital, at tinanong ka, alam ko kung saan ka nag-work, sa hospital. Yan. Siyempre, ikaw na nurse at nagtatrabaho ka nga talaga sa hospital, ay dininay mo, ay hindi. Sa school ako nag-work. Ayun. Pag sinabi mong ganon, you are committing a type 1 error. Bakit? Kasi you are denying the fact na nag-work ka nga sa hospital. Dininay mo yung true statement na nag-work ka sa hospital. So, that is type 1 error. What about type 2 error? Okay, type 2 error, magkukwento tayo saglit. So, di ba nung bata ka, if you can remember, pag naglalaro kayo sa labas at hapon na, evening na, and then, suddenly, pag uwi mo sa bahay nyo, para kang sinusundan ng buwan, yung moon. Takbo-takbo ka pa, okay? Akala mo, kahit tumakbo ka, sinusundan ka pa rin ng buwan. So, naniniwala ka, you believe that the moon is running onto you. Kumbaga, parang sinusundan ka ng buwan and you believe on that. Okay? Which is false. Diba dapat hindi ka maniwala na sinusundan ka ng buwan? So ngayon, that is an example of type 2 error. Bakit? Kasi hindi naman totoo na sinusundan ka ng buwan at naglalakad yung buwan kasama mo. But, instead na i-reject mo yung notion na yon, yung statement na yon, naniwala ka pa. Takot ka pang bumalik sa bahay ninyo. Kasi akala mo talaga ay sinusundan ka nga ng buwan. So that is an example of type 2 error. Okay, let me give you a clear example of these two types of error. First, we have entitled Maria's age. Maria insists that she is 30 years old when in fact she is 32 years old. What error is Mary committing or Maria committing? So in here, class, ang totoo 30 years old si Maria. Pero she is denying that fact at ang sabi niya ay hindi, 30 years old ako. So this is an example of a type 1 error. Bakit? Kasi instead of accepting na 30 years old siya, dinay pa niya. So nire-reject niya yung true age niya na 30 years old. So type 1 error. Next, what about this second example? Stephen's hairline. Stephen says that he is not bald. His hairline is just receding. Receding is yung naglalagas. Is he committing an error? If so, what type of error? So in this example, si Stephen, sinasabi niya, hindi ako kalbo, hindi ako nakakalbo. Pero yung fact na naglalagas yung buhok niya, kasi ito, his hairline is receding, ibig sabihin, he is denying yung totoong nangyayari sa kanyang buhok. So since he is denying the truth na nakakalbo na siya, that is also another example of type 1 error. What about this example number 3? Entitled Monkey Eating Eagle Hunt. A man plans to go hunting the Philippine monkey eating eagle, believing that is a proof of his mettle. Okay? Mettle is parang anting-anting or parang superpower, ganon. What type of error is this? Parang katulad siya ng first example natin na buwan. Bakit? Kasi naniniwala siya, this man believe na kapag nakahuli siya ng monkey eating eagle, ay lalakas siya or magkakaroon siya ng superpower. So instead of rejecting that myth, kasi myth, kasi kuan lang yun kasi parang sabi-sabi o ganon. Umaga paniniwala lang yun without any proof naman. Okay? So, this is an example of type 2 error. Kasi instead na i-reject niya yun, kasi paniniwalang yun, ay ina-accept pa niya. So, that is an example of type 2 error. So, I hope these types of error is clear to you. Thank you so much for listening.